Hi, everybody. Welcome back to the Inspire Health podcast, also running on UK Health Radio, the world's #1 health talk radio. So, today I want to talk about a topic that is very pressing over here in Canada, and I think will probably affect many other countries around the world as well. So this is some major regulatory changes that have taken place in Canada in the regulation of natural health products that will likely have a dramatic impact on your ability to access vitamins, nutritional supplements, minerals, herbs, homeopathic, you name it. What is coming down the line here looks like it could be really, really devastating for the entire natural health industry. And I want to break down some key points and then talk about it as best as I can. We've been on some different calls with lawyer Sean Buckley, who is also the founder of the National Health Products Protection Association. And he's been basically sharing what's been going on with the government and these policies that have been put through, which happened really, really fast. And there's been some really major, I think, significant government overreach bills that have been passed lately in relation to how health practitioners can practice and rights that we've lost, censorship issues, and now this on natural health products. And so this is called Bill C47, and it was recently put through, and then within a very short period of time was actually just recently passed as a law, I think a few days ago. So now everything that Sean had been working with now has to be slightly amended, because now they're not just trying to take out parts of it, they have to now appeal parts of it. So what is Bill C47? Now, there's a lot to this, and I'm going to put links here for the National Health Products Protection Association.org. Go there and you can learn a lot from it. Sean's really eloquent and understands this very well, so he can break this down in lots of detail, and there's a 34-page paper that breaks it down in significant detail. If you are a practitioner in Canada, you need to go to that and sign up and get on the email list and make sure that you read through this information, because it will absolutely affect your ability to practice in the coming years. So what Bill C47 essentially is it's a bill where they are trying to harmonize the international drug relations with other countries. And what they're wanting to do is they are wanting to, or what I should say, what they have done so far is that they have set it up so that natural health products will be essentially regulated in the exact same way that the chemical pharmaceutical drug industry is regulated. And there's significant consequences to doing that, which I'll break down for you. Now, overall, what's happening is that this is going to cause or allow them to charge natural health product businesses significantly new fees, which can be in up to about $100,000, depending on what that company does as far as distributing and manufacturing and labeling and all of these different things. It will impose new regulatory burdens on natural health product businesses, and it also gives the government dramatic powers over the natural health product community. And I'm going to go through some of these different aspects of what it actually does and how it's going to affect us in just a moment here. But what I think is really interesting is that this is a trend that you have probably seen when I read this to you over the past few years. But if you send a letter to your MP basically saying you don't like Bill C47 and they should turn this around and change this, this is the standard letter that you get back. And it reads as this: "Thank you for reaching out to me about the proposed changes to the natural health product regulations. Health Canada recognizes the importance of ensuring that natural health products available for sale in Canada are safe and effective. On April 20, 2023, our government proposed amendments to the Food and Drugs Act to extend the Protecting Canadians from Using Unsafe Drugs Act, also called the Vanessa's Law, to natural health products. These changes are intended to protect the health of Canadians, and consultation between Health Canada and natural supplement stakeholders is necessary to develop these regulatory changes." So again, you hear the same things over and over again. We're doing this for safety and effectiveness. And we're doing this to protect Canadians. I'm getting so sick that when I hear these words, safe and effective and to protect you, it actually makes me start to feel a little bit physically ill because I don't think any of it actually has to do anymore with protecting me or anybody else or around safety or about health. I actually think almost all of it has more to do about just more control and regulation. And so on the surface, that sounds good. It's like, yeah, we should be regulating natural products in a certain way. And, should they be regulated in the same way that we regulate pharmaceutical drug industry? So this basically comes down to asking the question then, are we at risk? Are natural health products safe for us or are they risky? And if they are risky, then maybe we do need more regulations on them. So when you hear stuff without it being prefaced for you to give you any kind of perspective, you've got nowhere to place it. When you just hear things like, we're going to be implementing more changes to make sure that things are safe, it doesn't really raise a lot of red flags for people. They kind of think, okay, that makes sense, then go ahead. But you need to ask yourself, well, are they risky to begin with? And what is the risk? And what would be a comparative risk to give me some sort of perspective on whether or not I'm okay with losing some of my freedoms around stuff in order to have more protection. So let's take a quick look at this. Are natural health products dangerous? Are they risky? So just to give you some perspective, for you to judge if you need to be concerned about a risk, you need to understand how that risk compares to other risks that you face. So, for example, would you be willing to give up a bunch of your freedoms to protect yourself from something like lightning? Because this is an important thing to ask yourself, because you're actually 14 times more likely to be struck by lightning than to die from a natural health product. Now, another one that you might ask, would you be okay with losing a bunch of your freedoms for something like bicycling or riding in a school bus? Because just so that you're aware of it, you're 428 times more likely to die from bicycling than to die from a natural health product, and 714 times more likely to die in a school bus accident than to die from a natural health product. This is how safe natural health products have been over many years. So would you be okay with all of a sudden significant regulations coming up preventing you from being able to bicycle when you want, where you want, all of these different things to protect you from bicycling so that you can stay safe? And if you're not, then you need to ask yourself, why are they doing that? Because when you see something like that, it speaks so clearly that it has nothing to do with your safety or with health. In fact, taking away our ability to access natural health products will likely cause significant harm for those people that actually very much need them and have benefited from them significantly. So now that we know that they're actually not really at risk, and I'm going to show you one other thing here that I think is a really important document to see. And I'm going to screen share here so the people that are watching this can check this out on the video. You can check this out on YouTube. But this was a document that was basically looking at the risk of dying compared to being killed on a Boeing 747 flight. Let's look at what is at the absolute top, the upper risk. So this is the very high level of risk. You see things like preventable medical injury. You see preventable adverse drug reactions in acute hospital situations. You see broad spectrum adverse drug reactions for all, adverse effects of pharmaceutical drugs, all in the USA. All of these are right up there in high level of risk to very high level of risk. So it makes sense to me that the chemical pharmaceutical drug industry would have significant regulations on it because it's inherently much more dangerous. It shows right there over and over again, very high risk. I mean, we've known for a long time, when you look at the top killers in the planet, iatrogenic causes of disease or drug-induced or just medical induced injury that's not done by mismanagement, but just medical induced injury that's a part of doing business with it, is always up there towards the top 5. Usually I think it's around 4 or 5 most of the time. Now let's see, where does natural health products fall into this range. Okay, well, let's just keep on going down here. There's cyclists, avalanche, dying in sport and recreation, dying on a Boeing 747. Right down here, dying from bee, wasp, or hornet sting at 0.06. There we go. Natural healthcare and therapeutic products, 0.014, just above dying from a meteorite at 0.000006. So what we're seeing is that natural healthcare products are right down here in the ultra safe to very low level of risk. So for anybody that tells you that natural supplements are not safe, they don't know what they're talking about. So when Health Canada is telling us we're doing this for your safety, they're not, because it's obviously not the case. And why then are they doing it for that instead of doing it for setting up places all over the country where you can be protected from lightning storms or taking away your rights from riding a bicycle? It doesn't make any sense. Okay, so I'm going through the discussion paper on the 2023 Health Canada Initiative, and this is what has been prepared by Sean Buckley, the lawyer and president of the Natural Health Products Protection Association. And this was the latest revision was on June 23, 2023. And I just want to go through a summary of some of the major changes that this bill that has now gone through as a law is going to be setting in motion, just so you can understand the broad spectrum effects of it. So we're likely going to lose natural health products and the practitioners that rely on them unless Canadians step up to stop this. This is the end of non-pharmaceutical healthcare. The fees being imposed will drive small and medium natural health product businesses and practitioners out of business. The new fees will fund new permanent inspection regulatory programs that will dramatically increase the regulatory burden on natural health product businesses and practitioners. This will ultimately make it almost impossible to actually practice, and the cost will be so high that you just won't be able to make it work. The new regulatory burden being imposed will drive small and medium natural health product businesses and practitioners out of business. We will lose natural health products, natural health companies, and eventually natural health practitioners. Prices to consumers will increase, which removes products for people who can no longer afford them. There's significant fees that are going to be added to all of this, whether licensing fees and regulatory fees and all sorts of different things, to the point that many companies just won't be able to afford to do business anymore. What this essentially does is it's going to get rid of all of the small and medium-sized natural health product manufacturers and businesses that just cannot keep up with that. What that's going to do is then leave it for a few large conglomerates to kind of take over the whole thing. Now, even though they have to pay higher fees, in the long run, it's going to work out for them because they get a monopoly of the entire industry. So it actually works out really well for the conglomerates because they get all of the business, even though they have to pay higher fees. And it works out for the bureaucrats because they get a lot more money in the fees to extend their network as well. And remember that as those fees increase to the businesses, that increase in cost gets transferred over to the consumer, which means prices for those products are going to significantly go up. There's also going to be significant censorship on truthful health information, which will increase, which is going to take away products as well, because people cannot share with you what those products are actually good for or what they have been able to treat. So we also used to be able to use traditional evidence based on often thousands of years of clinical expertise and usage of these medicines. So think about herbs from Chinese herbs or Ayurvedic herbs, or herbalists, or different new nutritional interventions that have been used for decades. We could use that information clinically and use that as part of the evidence. We could use a lot of different ways to measure effectiveness of these different natural health products. We're not allowed to use traditional evidence anymore. So it all has to be done the exact same way that they look for efficacy on a pharmaceutical, which is usually a very, very costly, often millions of dollars to run double-blind placebo-controlled studies. A lot of times which doesn't even work that well to actually assess the way natural health products actually work. But now they're all getting tied into the same regulation. So if you can't do that, then you can't actually say what your product is good for actually treating, regardless of whether you've got thousands of years of clinical practice. So it'd be like me saying that even though maybe something like fennel has been used for thousands of years in different cultures to take as a carminative, something to help with gas and bloating and stuff like that after a meal, unless you have a double-blind placebo-controlled study, you cannot say that it actually is used to help with that. Just to give some preface for that. And with that, if practitioners actually were sharing, say, traditional evidence, they could actually put themselves at significant risk for significant fines and even now possibly losing their license. So the powers and penalties that we fought against in Bill C-51 back in 2008 will be imposed on those in the natural health community. Fines will increase from what used to be a maximum of $5,000 for an offense to now $5 million per day of an offense. I mean, that's massive, massive changes. If any company had an offense for whatever, whatever it might be, whether they talked about something that was from a traditional use or whatever that might be, if it was not in accordance with what they were allowed to say, they could be fined up to $5 million a day for that offense. Health Canada will also get, as Sean says here, almost godlike powers where they can order you to take any corrective action. Failure to comply can result again in $5 million a day fines. And this is really just the beginning. There's a lot of stuff that hasn't quite been disclosed yet, and there's other information that still is on the table. There's other fines and other costs that are likely to come down the chain that we just don't even know about yet. So I highly recommend people to sign up to the nhppa.org website and get information as it is coming out. Sean is constantly putting out information and supporting people and practitioners in knowing what is coming and what we can actually do. So the next part of this is then, what do we actually do? Is there something that we can do to try and turn this around? So something that I think is really important to know is that back in 2008, I remember when this was going through and when this Bill C-51 was going to go through, and it was essentially the same sort of stuff. They were trying to create major regulations around natural health products. And what happened was they went through the proper process. So this time they didn't go through the proper process, and I'm going to share that in just a moment. But Bill C-51 was a standalone bill, which meant it had to be presented, and then it had to go into the Standing Committee of Health, which has expertise in regulations of natural health products, and it has to be there has to be an allowance for public consultation on the issue. And so that actually gives the public a chance to resist and then write letters to their MP and complain about it. And basically what happened was they were getting wheelbarrow full of written letters that everything just shut down, and they ended up not passing it. So we stopped it back then. What they did this time, which was so sneaky, because they knew how the public felt about natural health products and the backlash they got when they tried to put it through back in 2008. So this time, rather than doing it as a standalone bill, they stuck it through Bill C-47, which was through a budget bill. And so budget bills get passed very quickly, and they don't go through a standing committee of health. So it was essentially buried in sections 500 to 504, Bill C-47, and now it's been passed as a law. So now we're having to try to get a repeal on it, on those specifics between the sections 500 to 504, where all of this stuff was put in place and all of these major restrictions were put in place. So just so you know how quickly these things can happen and how sneaky it is, because they knew nothing about this was transparent. This was something that they've obviously been wanting to put through. If they really wanted to have a conversation with the public around it, then they would have made it a proper standalone bill and allow people to share their input. But they didn't. They snuck it through something where people wouldn't even know it was happening. Luckily, there's people like Sean Buckley and others that caught this and then are bringing it to our awareness so we can do something about it. So at this point, what do we actually do? What's the call to action? And I don't want to underestimate this. This is incredibly important. If we don't do something, we will lose the natural health industry. It will be a shadow of what it actually was, and your access to anything but essentially pharmaceutical drug for any kind of healthcare is going to be your only option. You will have very little options if this is allowed to move through. I feel like this is a major, major step where if this goes through without anybody challenging it and fighting back, we are just rolling over to allow whatever is going to come next and whatever is going to come next. We are going to steadily lose more and more health freedoms and sovereignty, and it's just going to drift away and dissolve. This is a point where we need to actually step up and do something. And so I want to share with you a message that Sean Buckley shared with us in one of the videos calls that we were on with him. So I'm going to pull that up right now, and I think this is important to hear.
Now, why I'm telling you this and why this is so important is us losing our natural health products is the least of our worries right now. Us waking up the Canadian population to the wider issues of what's going on, and us actually getting the MPs to understand they're not going to get elected, we can do that over this issue. We actually have an opportunity to wake up a sleeping segment of Canadian population who is concerned and will be concerned about losing their access to natural health products. We have practitioners on this call. If we if we can all organize properly and have all the practitioners educating their patients, that in itself would create an army that we can use to stop these initiatives. But remember, these initiatives are just part of something else, and we have to wake people up to a little bit about the something else. We have to figure out what that is, and likely it's these international health regulations, because that's what's tied to this. And it's an opportunity, but we're going to have a fight like we've never had before. This, because the problem is once they pulled the trigger on COVID, once they started basically all of this messaging to change how we interacted with government and to change the power balance between government and citizen, and basically put us into a situation where it's okay to take away consent and it's okay to coerce people into taking medical treatments. We're now in a brave new world. And they're entrenched and they have to keep going. Or, they're going to be put in jail. So they have to try and finish this takeover, this transfer of powers from the citizen and transfer of power from sovereign states. And that's what we're in a process of. So this is going to be a very, very difficult fight and much different than we've had before. But the other thing that's really interesting is you've learned what it's like to be afraid. You've learned what it's like to be, totally blown over by learning that the world is a different place. But what you haven't learned yet is what it's like to stand up and be willing to lose things, to actually pay a price. And what's interesting about that is it's actually very freeing when you just decide, no, this is right and that's wrong. And whatever the cost, I'm standing up for right. This is good, this is evil. I'm going to resist evil. In whatever form I see it, whatever the cost, I'm going to stand up. You will never be more free in your life. I forget the gentleman's name.
I think what Sean says there is so important and so valuable for all of us health practitioners out there. What he's essentially getting to is that if we don't do something at this point, there's really no coming back. It's just going to get less and less and less. And, he said earlier on, he said, within 2 years, naturopathic profession will be gone. It won't even be able to be a viable option for anybody. If this goes, we won't be able to talk to people about what's helpful, and we won't be able to have access to those things that actually help people. So what he's saying is we need to be able to stand up and even know that we might be putting ourselves at a certain risk to be able to stand up. But this goes so far beyond that. What can we do to start to actually make a difference right now? I'm not thinking about this even just for me right now. I think about this for my kids. I think about this for my grandkids. What world do we want to leave in the hands for our children and for our grandkids? I think many health professions have been in a standstill, and many health practitioners have been in sort of a standstill and keeping their head buried in the ground because they just don't want to say anything, or they don't want to ruffle the boat, or they're terrified that they're going to have their license taken from them, or whatever it might be. I think what Sean is showing very clearly is that we are heading in a direction that is not beneficial for anybody. It is not taking care of people's health. It is not looking at people's safety. If anything, it is actually going to be taking away those things for people if we limit the ability for people to have access to a very different style of healthcare, which we know works so well for our patients that we've been doing for often decades. So, what can we actually do then? And at the end of it, it's right now, it's writing letters to your MP. And they talk about a different level of communication and the importance of it. So ultimately, what would be number one would be make an appointment and talk to your MP face to face. Tell them what's going on, because most of the time your MP will have no idea what's actually going on. You will be bringing that information to them. But if they see you and they hear you, that's going to have more of an impact than, say, signing a petition and sending it off or emailing. That would be almost worthless. So call them, and if you can't call them, or if you can't see them in person, try calling them. If you can't call them and talk to them, then write a physical letter. Writing a physical letter and mailing it. Print off a bunch of different letters and send them to a bunch of MPs. Send them regularly. Send them out to as many people and get other people to write the letters. This is why I'm doing this episode, is I want any health practitioners out there, any person that is concerned about this, write a personal letter and send it to your MP. Make it a physical letter, not an email. Most of those things just go into trash. But if they actually get physical letters showing up, that will have an impact. So that would be probably the most important thing that we can do right now. The other things would be get on that email list for the website that I talked to you about earlier with Sean Buckley's, the nhppa.org website. Go there and sign up so that you get information that comes up and new updates as to what's going on. And they also need support. So they are looking for volunteers. They're looking for donations. I would sign up and donate a monthly amount so that they can actually hire the people necessary to do this. This is really, really huge, and it's a major step in a positive direction to try and put an end to this if we can. And to me, I just did an episode last week on tithing as part of the principle of prosperity. So this is going to be one of the new groups that I am going to be donating to, because this is my spiritual food. What Sean is doing is stepping up and saying what needs to be done. And the least we can do is support that process and support them in the financing so that they can get it done. Also ask yourself, what else can I do? What else can we do? Can we share it? Can we post things? Can we put it out on social media? Can we rally groups together to go and speak with our MPs? What can we do that puts the responsibility back in our hands? I find so often we wait things out and hope that other people are going to get the job done, or something's going to magically turn things around without us actually taking responsibility for our lives and doing what needs to be done. So step up, get a hold of your MP, write letters, share this message with other people, make sure that practitioners know what is going on, because this has been very quietly passed through. Make sure people are aware of it, and then pass the same message along for them to speak to their MP, to sign up to the newsletter, to start to support even a small amount every month to that organization. I have no affiliation with the organization, but I think that it's incredibly important right at the moment in standing up for one of the things that I think is the most important, which has to do with our freedoms, our personal freedoms, our health sovereignty, our ability to treat ourselves and our health in the way that we deem necessary and what works for us. It's insane to think that the way that we are able to treat our own health conditions is going to get minimized and minimized and minimized and controlled so that there's very, very few options available to us. How is that even possible to be living in a country like Canada and thinking that we have lost that much of our health freedoms? I will leave all of those links in the show notes, and you can go and check all of that stuff out. Please go check it out, sign up, and spread this message around. Get this out to as many health practitioners as you can. And if you are not a health practitioner, but this affects you or you don't agree with it, then again, contact your MP, share this with other people. Let's all try and get together. Let me know if you're listening to this from another country. Send me a message here, leave a message on the YouTube channel. Let me know what's going on there. Let me know if you're seeing similar patterns, because from what I understand is this is actually in line. This is an international initiative. So the idea is to create a harmonization between the chemical industry of pharmaceutical drugs and the natural health products so that they all are in the same category, and it actually makes it easier for international relations and trade. So let me know if you're seeing some of this going on there. I've heard some stuff about different areas in Spain that have been seeing decreasing availability of health products. We've seen lots of censorship on this over the past few years, but yes, I'd be curious to hear if there's anything else going on, and even being able to maybe collaborate groups in different places and share information and share strategies that might be working. So I hope this helps those that were not aware of it. I hope it inspires those to actually act and do something around this. And I really still believe that we are going to come out the other side, but there may be some mucky messiness that we've got to go through first in order to get there. And I truly believe that nothing is going to change until we continually step more and more into our own sovereignty and to our own responsibility, and then act in a way that we feel makes sense. And one thing I really appreciated that Sean had said was, a law is just if it is in alignment with the second commandment, which is love thy neighbor as I love thyself, or do unto others as I would do unto myself. And if it doesn't feel like that, then it's probably not a very just law. I always go by how it makes my body feel. If I feel like something causes me to constrict and retract and feel kind of icky inside, there's something wrong with it. I want something to feel like it expands and it opens and it creates more freedom and more space. We need to be very aware of how different things make our bodies feel when they come into our presence. When we start to hear something like this, how does it make you feel? Listen to how your body is telling you, and then see if you can act from that place. So do everything as best as you can. I've shared those sort of action steps. Do that as much as you can. Share the message out, and I will keep you updated. I'm going to see if I can get Sean on an episode here and break this down in more detail. I know he's crazy busy right now, but if we can, I'd love to have him on here and then share this in even more, and maybe get some questions from you out there that I can pose to him directly. So thank you so much for listening to this episode. I very much appreciate it, and I will talk to you guys soon. We will be starting next episode. We'll be starting our newest series on creating New Earth, a collaborative mission. And I think this is actually really timely, because if we want to create a world in a certain way, what do we need to do? This is a prime example of it. There's a course that's moving in a very, I think, negative direction. And if we don't want that, what do we want? And then what's necessary, what's required to actually make that happen? These are some of the things that are required to make that happen. All right, everybody, much love to all of you, and I appreciate your support. Please subscribe, share, like, all of those things helps us get this message out. And I'll talk to you soon.